welcome back to another edition of the Change My Mind podcast.
I won't change my mind because I don't have to, because I'm an American.
Yes, you are, and I'm Wesley Sykes. Through the other side of the ether is the Cinco to my Foomph. It's Mr. Nicholas J. Esquire. $5 holla for hire.
I have no idea. Oh, wait a minute. I'm a dumbass. What language is Foomph then?
German.
Oh, okay, got it. Wow, that took me a second. I had no fucking clue what you were.
I wanted to go outside of the Romance languages because Spanish was already accounted for then. But talking through it now, I feel like I should have went Portuguese for you instead. But I don't think there's much of a difference.
There is no difference. You had
Okay,
it. Yeah, it would have been funny if you did the Cinco to my Cinco.
There we go.
So, yeah.
Would I say it with a lisp? Is that the Portuguese?
Cinco. No, I mean, like, the only thing I've ever heard is like the O's not pronounced as much would be sync.
Okay.
But
all right.
That's really it. Yeah. God, you just took me, like, talking about this just took me back to my childhood when my Vavo and Vavu would drive me around in their car, like when they pick me up for school or whatever. Mm-hmm. And on the radio, they have the Portuguese radio station on. Cinco, 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 oito, cinco. It's just, so many cincos. Like, I think that was the first Portuguese word that I learned.
Well, a little bit of crossover here. Vivian has a Vuvo with Julia's father there, so that's what we call her. Julia's dad.
Oh, nice, nice. There you go. Yeah,
Vuvo.
Vavu is grandfather. Vavo is grandmother.
Yeah, there we go with that.
Yes, yeah, exactly. There you go.
I sometimes call him Volvo to be a jerk, but that doesn't really work. Always play.
That's funny. I'm surprised my dad's never done something like that. I guess it probably would have been received well.
Yeah, you probably did, and then just shut it down. Didn't really workshop it with the rest of the crowd.
Yeah, that sounds about right. He loves the fucking workshop. Anyways,
well, yeah, throw it by him next time you see him. See what he thinks.
Yeah, I will. I will have to. He actually just texted me. He just qualified for the Massachusetts Senior Amateur. He just
no kidding.
Yes, yeah, I did a few years back, and now he's back in it again this year. So very happy for him. I don't know. He texted me like right before we started recording, and I'm missing everything right now. So I'll find out after.
Okay, big important stuff. I got it. So we'll put that on hold for a minute here because this week in our penultimate episode, which is always, if you watch TV shows, always the best episode ever, right? So the most drama, the highest action, all of that. We're going to give you our top fives of all things related to the podcast. MCU, DCU, TV shows, movies, pop culture, all of that stuff. So we're going to be giving you our top fives. It's going to be a 2-part episode, much like many of the best movies. If you think of Harry Potter, the Avengers saga, what else am I thinking of here? Lord of the Rings part 1, part 2, Lord of the Rings.
3 parts. I mean, I know it's not 2, but still.
Did the Hobbit have part 1 and part 2?
That had 3, but like the Hobbit's 1 book. Lord of the Rings is like 1 story, but 3 books. So
yeah, well, that's kind of what we're doing here too, right? It's like Infinity War and Endgame is like 1 story split over 2 parts, right? Deathly Hallows is 1 book in 2 parts, right? So, we'll be doing all that good stuff today. But before that, Nick, sticking with that top 5 theme, of course, we're on the heels of our summer catch, our award-winning summer catch exit survey. Give me your top 5 pitchers of all time.
Of all time, thankfully I do think about this quite a bit because it's not because I care about pitching more than hitting any day of the week. But
okay, before that, give me a yes or no. Randy Johnson, steroid user.
I saw that thing in the chat. There's no way. I now if he was in the league today, I wouldn't say steroids, but like PEDs maybe. I don't know because you just don't know with guys now because there's so like the stuff's gotten so much better over the years.
Sure.
But Randy Johnson back then, he'd be a moose. Like he would be jacked out of his mind. I don't think they had. How many guys were on PEDs that you can recall that looked as svelte as him? Like Nomar was probably one of the more svelte guys, and he was still pretty friggin' jacked.
He was jacked, right? Yeah. And Randy Johnson was never jacked. I know it was floated around or rumor mongers about Pedro as well. But I don't believe those.
I from just the physical appearance standpoint and stuff, when you look at those 3 guys from that era, Maddox being the 3rd one, I'm excluding Clemens because he obviously, we know what happened there.
Yeah.
Pedro would be the guy I would say just from like because he threw gas, he was small, and he was like the heaviest set guy of the bunch. Like, but I don't know. He was never like nothing ever came out. Like I feel like even you're talking about rumors. I don't even know of the rumors.
I agree. No, I feel like there are more, not even rumors, just maybe more accusations that he was so good in the steroid era that something has to be up. So it's like not even like a really founded, accusation there, but it's just like, all right, well, if he was that good at that point in time, then you have to consider him.
There you go. So for me, those three guys are in my top 5. I always kind of wrestle around in my head like who is actually the best one of that bunch, because Pedro probably had the biggest peak. Johnson had he obviously had some insane longevity, but so did Greg Maddux too.
Mm-hmm.
But Greg Maddux had the best control, best command, of all time. So it's splitting hairs, but all three of those guys I think are your top 3 because they pitched in the steroid era. And as far as I understand it, none of them were using steroids. Obviously, we know we can say that about Maddux without any question.
Sure.
More than any of them. But then from there, I tend to go with Bob Gibson next because he was so damn good that they had to they changed the height of the mound in Major League
That's
Baseball.
right. Yeah.
So he was friggin' insane, and he had a wipeout slider. He's easily number 4 on my list. Then from there, it's I don't know. It gets kind of tough. Like historically, I have a soft spot for Bob Feller. You have Justin Verlander, who was just a friggin' freak in his time, and I hope that history that he ages well, just because he was so dominant for such a long time, and he was the first guy that I recall ever hearing or ever seeing. We joked about it with Summer Catch. Verlander would throw 92 to 94 through the first 4 or 5 innings.
Yeah.
And if he was still if he was going strong, he could see him pop off for 99. He did that at a point in his career. So I kind of feel compelled to go with him. Obviously, there are other guys in the modern era.
Yeah, he doesn't have 300 wins, right?
No, I don't. I think.
But he has 3,000 strikeouts?
I believe he has 3,000 strikeouts. I'd be stunned if Justin Verlander doesn't have 3,000 strikeouts.
Because he might be one of the last guys to get those numbers. I probably won't get 300 wins, but how many guys are getting 3,000 strikeouts in their career with just how shortened the game's gotten?
Right. So he's got 3,393 strikeouts, and then he's got 260 wins. So he's close. I feel like Kershaw is close as well. The thing with Verlander is he just needs to stay healthy. I don't know if he's talked about retiring. He's obviously 41. So it's
he doesn't have 40 wins left in him.
Yeah, no shot in hell. So he's close. Obviously a first ballot Hall of Famer. And there are other guys, obviously Nolan Ryan's a guy who always comes up. Tom Seaver is another guy who's of that similar ilk too. I'd probably say Tom Seaver just to not be too modern. So that's probably my number 5. No particular order.
2, and these wouldn't be in my top 5, but maybe some of my favorite or most feared pitchers are 2 Yankees. It's Andy Pettitte and Orlando Hernandez. I loved El Duque just because he was a free agent in MLB or MVP baseball 04 or 05, one of those games. So you were always able to sign him, and he just had a ridiculous curveball that you could get over. So I loved pitching with him. Liked his windup, a pretty good player. But Andy Pettitte always put the fear of God in me. He was so intimidating with the glove, just over his nose, below his eyes, and it was very narrow to see over the bill of his hat. The full wind up rotation going over the head. I loved everything about that, and he was a playoff performer too.
He was a beast.
Obvious steroid user as well.
Yes,
but really, really good.
He was a beast. Yeah, those are some good calls. Another guy who I didn't mention in his one, I wouldn't put him in my top 5, but in terms of my personal favorites, he's probably in my top 5 is Roy Halladay. He was a beast, and I know he only walked away with 203 wins in his career, but he was so good for so long for the Blue Jays. He had a perfect game and a no-hitter separately in the postseason. He was a 9-time All-Star, 2-time Cy Young Award winner. He's like Lincecum was he popped off and was the man for 4 years. Yep. Halladay did that for a stretch of time and won his 2 Cy Youngs, and he continued to be a beast. And from a stuff standpoint, he was like, I remember learning so much watching him. I don't need to get too much into it. Go listen to the Summer Catch episode, everybody, if you want more baseball.
Also love David Wells too.
Oh, he was good.
Fat guy. I think he kind of. I don't think he coined this quote, but I think he's definitely said it. You can't pull fat. Which I think is just so true as to why he was always gaining weight. And I think he was just on Part of My Take recently, giving talking about his career and everything. And I think in his career, like earlier in his career, he had injury problems as he was in better shape and had more muscle. But as he got fatter, he became a more durable pitcher, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Mass equals gas, man. Oh,
Yeah.
damn, and that's interesting. I didn't know that about him, but I mean, so whatever. Like, guys have their weight that they're comfortable operating at.
Yeah, exactly. No one's. I mean, Pablo Sandoval did it for a couple of years. Probably got a little too big for his britches once he came to Boston. But yeah,
maybe a smidge, maybe.
But he got 3 rings out in San Fran there, playing at his weight there. So yeah.
Oh absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And the guy who also, I just want to, like, from a postseason performer standpoint, like when you bring up Pettit, Madison Bumgarner, like all time.
Oh sure.
I'm sure when his Hall of Fame eligibility, that conversation comes around, people will be like, he shouldn't be in, blah blah blah. I think it'll take time, but he should get in because of what he did in the postseason.
Good. Absolutely, and like purely from like if you want to represent championship teams from a certain era, like he would be the guy that you go to. Because those teams were kind of pieced together for like those championship runs, right? I mean, it was Sandoval,
Buster Posey.
But for sure,
yes, yeah. It's him and Posey though. Yes, absolutely. But like, yeah, he's still like he's only a 4-time All-Star. I don't normally feel that way about a guy who's, but he was so good. And he still walked away with like 3.47 career ERA, nothing crazy. But anyways, like I love Mad Bum. That's another guy who was.
He's kind of like the argument could also be put forth for like Julian Edelman, like maybe not the best regular season player, but came through in postseason, has the rings to kind of back it up too.
That's an interesting comp because I don't know. I mean, I could see Edelman having the case. Yeah, that's an interesting comp.
Because if it's just the regular season, probably not, right? But it's like you add that postseason stuff, and he's like, all right.
It's important. I mean, it's like, do we not give a shit about winning?
I hear you.
It's a good.
I hear you. This is the new podcast, everyone. We're going to be rebranding from a movies, TV, pop culture podcast, just back to sports, which is our wheelhouse. So
it is.
There we go.
In case you forgot, yeah, that is our wheelhouse.
Yes, but there are only 2 minutes left in Nick's comic book minute, so let's make it a good one, huh? No pressure.
A superb choice.
What a way to put it. Jeez. From Boom this week, I'm starting there because we got some heavy hitters in Marvel and DC. But from Boom, we got Blowaway issue 5. It's a series that I've been reading. I'll talk about that a little bit on TLDR. It's the final issue. From Image, we got the start of the series Standstill, which was I'd known about, but kind of a little surprise that Joe and I both really liked. Again, we'll break that down more. From DC this week, we got Nightwing issue 117, and then Dark Knights of Steel All Winter issue 2. For people on Twitter who maybe aren't reading the Dark Knights of Steel stuff, something that you should check out because it's all set in like medieval times, and this specifically for All Winter is focused on Deathstroke. So you don't really have to know what's gone on previously, in the Dark Knights of Steel world. And this the first issue was great. Very excited for the second one. And then from Marvel, huge week for Marvel in terms of like the top books. We got Ultimate Spider-Man issue 8, Ghost Rider Final Vengeance issue 6. That's the final issue of that little short Ghost Rider series. And then Wolverine Revenge issue 1. This is Jonathan Hickman is the writer, so the writer of Secret Wars. And then Greg Capullo, who everybody knows from his run with Scott Snyder on Batman. He is the artist. And this is first time he's been doing anything Marvel related in like, I think maybe 3 decades, something like that. I don't know. It's been a long ass time. So, so a big deal there. And then from TLDR, we're doing What's New this week, which does mean we should have something else in the hopper later on in the week, but nothing in the can yet. So I will have to listen to that show to find out what else we got besides the new comics coming out this week.
Love when you got something in the hopper. It's always a nice tease, I
try.
It really gets my nips hard there.
Thank you.
Main topic time, all-time top 5 as it relates to the CMM podcast here. So we got about, maybe we'll see how many we'll get to. We got about 14 in total, but we're going to split them off into, as we said, a 2-part episode here. So We might get to 5, we might get to 7, but we'll get to all of them over the course of the next 2 episodes here. And let's just dive in. There's nothing really to explain. It's just top 5 lists.
Yeah, well, other than like this is like, you know, it's for the show specifically, like things that we've done on the show, things that we didn't do that we maybe would have liked to do, different kind of shit like that. Not just, you know, we're not going to get into who your top 5 catchers of all time are. Or
although if you're interested, you know, big Jason Varitek guy, obviously. Buster Posey was a pretty good one. Let me see who else I can come up with.
Mike Piazza's my guy through and through. He was my favorite player.
Mike Piazza. What other good catchers are there?
Carlton Fisk, Johnny Bench for the old
but I
guys.
didn't see
Josh
those
Gibson.
guys.
No, I agree. Pudge, the other Pudge, Ivan Rodriguez.
Sure. Yeah.
Obviously, when we talk about PED stuff, though, obviously with all those guys, it's, you know, that those conversations are relevant. From a modern era, Salvador Perez is a freaking savage.
What about he transitioned to first base. Why am I blanking on it? Is it he was a Red Sox player
who
former Angel?
Why am I blanking? Mike Napoli?
Yes.
No. Was Napoli? Yeah.
I think Napoli started out as a catcher, didn't he?
Yeah, but in your top, yes, he did. He absolutely did. I think he was with Cleveland when he was. I'm actually blanking on who he was with first, and wow. But anyways, yeah, that's an interesting name to pull up. Wow.
Yeah, there we go. Top 5. Yep, number 1.
Mike Napoli, number 1 with a bullet.
But that'll be next episode though. Top 5 catchers.
There we go.
But starting out, our first top 5 are the top 5 non-review episodes, so non-exit surveys, really, right? That's kind of how we did this.
Yeah, absolutely. Because obviously, we'll talk about some of the movies that we've discussed, but we came up with some creative ideas along the way in the show. Certain things that were one-offs, some things that became reoccurring items, obviously. So I was curious what your thoughts were, and I wanted to highlight some of mine. And some of this stuff I do have, you know, where grades are appropriate, obviously not for this, but also episode numbers for anybody who wants to go back and listen. So for me, Wes, starting out at my number 5, I have the 15th episode of Change My Mind.
I remember
Captain America is the MCU's main protagonist, which is the angle that I took. You took Iron Man. This was part of our entire coverage of Endgame when it first came out, and it's crazy to think that that's when our show started.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree. I remember this. I think this is a great episode. It's a great microcosm for what the show is about. Because I think this type of format that we did for this episode ended up kind of warping into the original versus sequel debate formats. So that definitely played a role all the way up until the end of the whole podcast here. But, you know, Captain America, Iron Man, that's all about what we do here. I'm still Team Iron Man, although I might say I like the Captain America movies more.
Ooh, yep, that's fair.
You know,
yeah, it's cheated with the Civil War, of course. But should we just? We should have talked about this before. And should I just run through all my 5 real quick, and then we'll break down each other's afterwards?
Yeah. Okay, let's do that
for the sake of time. So, for number 4 on my list, episode 61, Nick's Comic Book Hour, where we talk about Civil War and Avengers versus X-Men. Episode 83 comes in at my 3rd on my list. That was Multiverse Madness. Not to be confused with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. We'll get into some of that more. Then number 2, episode 191, Original versus Sequel, the most popular episode ever of Change My Mind is on YouTube specifically. Over 78,000 views over there. Original versus Sequel, Deadpool versus Deadpool 2.
I was hoping to get to 100K by Deadpool and Wolverine, but that just didn't happen. We didn't get the SEO push that I was hoping for.
No, it's still been climbing up recently, because I feel like you told me about 76, and I've seen it like creep up more and more since you told me that. Maybe you told me it was a little lower than 76. But anyways, and number 1 is the first time that we had Eric and Julia Leewald on the program. Goo, obviously, and you were running that show heavily, but that was a lot of fun, and like we got some newsy items. So like between that one and then in the Deadpool conversation, those have gotten the most attention of any episodes that we've done.
Yeah, we got picked up a couple times. We got quoted. We probably got mislabeled or misattributed a couple times too through that Erica and Julia Leewald interview there. That definitely makes my list at my number 3. But number 5 for me is episode 120, hashtag Mask Off Massachusetts Memorial Day Weekend Bonanza Extravaganza. Does this ring a bell to you?
I don't remember what we talked about, but I remember that episode. Yeah.
Yeah. So number 4 would be episode 94, Home Alone, original versus sequel, with Lost in New York City too. That was during our holiday season bonanza there. Like I said, the X-Men the animated series interview, and then 2 and 1 or 2 interviews that we did during our hashtag spooky season, almost about 2 weeks apart. So episode 86 with a recurring guest, Tim Weisberg on paranormal activities. Loved all that stuff. And then as a follow-up, episode 88 with Christopher Balzano, who also did more spooky things, paranormal, ghost, cryptids, all that kind of stuff too. But really enjoyed those conversations.
Yeah, I think in hindsight, if there was something like, I'm like, I feel like I'm being like nitpicky when I'm saying this, because like I loved a lot of what we did, and I think we made a lot of right calls, and
Sure.
we were in line on a lot of creative stuff. But something that would have probably been good is if, in our spooky seasons, obviously we did this over 5 years, after Tim was no longer our third guy in the chair, have like at least one of those 2 guys back on again.
Yes.
Each of the years.
Yeah. That was a miss.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously, like different things pop up, right? And scheduling those things are not always easy to do. But like, just to reiterate, like that, I'm saying all that because they were very good. That is a great call. I'm glad that those made your list.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. There. But the real one that I love is the Mask Off Massachusetts Memorial Day Weekend Bonanza Extravaganza. That is where we had other members of the DSG and the DSG greater universe. Some of the other people who like interact with the podcast submit things on their favorite summer destinations in New England.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay. All right.
So Billy made that video about like Revere Beach. It was kind of like a mockumentary video,
Yeah.
which I thought was really, I think it was Revere Beach. Maybe Hampton Beach.
Might have been Hampton Beach. I'm
Yeah.
not sure. But either way, yeah. That's what that was. Okay. Yep. Yeah, that was, wow. I saw that when I was scrolling and like through the episodes, just like trying to figure out what, for various reasons. And I was like, oh, what the fuck was this? Like, what did we do? Like, this is when we were getting like back out into the wild again.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that they had all just cleared that, like the first soft opening of America after the pandemic,
Yeah.
So that was that there. Then that was a great time. And the original versus sequel stuff, Home Alone is great for it. I think this was the episode that sparked our former DSG member Jason Rossi to and he'll come up in a second here too, to continue doing these original versus sequels. That he really enjoyed that. I think it was this episode.
Yeah, it was either that or it was the Spider-Man conversation. I feel like those two were right around it, but it was like you're right. Like those are these conversations are the kind of ones that you have with like your buddies, and like that's why we sometimes we feel similarly. Like we might feel like I obviously like Home Alone 2 more for those who don't remember. So that was an easy one for us. But like Deadpool versus Deadpool 2, like I forget who even took which side. I know I prefer Deadpool 1, but I think depending on the day or like there's certain things that Deadpool 2 did better than Deadpool 1.
Yeah, and it's sometimes that can be the real challenge of debating this. Maybe it's come across in an episode or two where one of us didn't have the heart in it to really argue that it was a better movie.
I think that happens. That happened probably for each of us here and there. I feel like too when we did the catalog comparisons too. I think those got tough at times. We obviously stopped doing that after a period, but I mean, we also had to get creative because of the shutdown. Like that was in our second year of doing this show. And, we got like a big boost from like being added to the DSG and being able to utilize other guys from other shows. We all helped each other out in that weird time, but we threw a lot of shit against the wall, and original versus sequel was the biggest one that kind of came out of it and stuck with us. I feel like there's another one that I'm blanking on. Maybe it'll come up later, but one we didn't really go back to a whole heck of a lot that I really liked was Multiverse of Madness. Because I feel like this is a twice. I think we did a second one. I'm pretty did, and we could have. I still think like that, like especially because a big thing for me when I watch movies is I'll see actors and it's like someone like if it's Glenn Powell, like whatever, like we all know what Glenn Powell's like, what the different movies he's from. But if it's someone who you don't see a whole fucking shit ton, it's like in the movie that I was gonna bring up for Discharge Depot, the guy from what is it? I think you should leave, where he makes fun of his wife and like feels bad. Like
Oh yeah, yeah,
he was
yeah.
in it. Like right away, and I'm like, holy shit, like it's him. And then instantly I start thinking like, how
The
could
big
that
guy with the beard, right?
he did not have a beard, I think,
Oh.
in that one. But he's like the guy who what's the guy who keeps stealing his lines? I can't Jimmy Taco.
Yeah. That's
That whole bit.
we're thinking of the same guy. Yeah.
Okay. So he's in that movie. And I started thinking, like, how would I like, is there a line that I could draw from one character to the other? And there are a lot of times, there are plenty of times where it's like, this is a very obvious through line for two characters that this actor has played before. So I had a lot of fun with that one.
That's fun. That helps us kind of flex that creative muscle a little bit
Yes.
there. Get a little wacky, get a little out there. I do love your honorable mentions. Of course, episode 1, spoilers versus non-spoilers.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
It's the first one. It was on my list originally, but I was like, we're definitely better now
We're
than we were
sharper
back
now,
then.
yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm not going to bump 61 and above. And then I felt like Captain America as the MCU's main protagonist was a fairly popular episode for us for a while too, from like the listener standpoint, and just a fun conversation to have because like one of us genuinely felt that way. So,
Yeah.
and obviously like Iron Man is like, what most people feel. So
Yeah, but it's I think that it's a great argument, and still people to this day they'll argue to their graves Iron Man versus Captain America.
Absolutely. And then the other thing I just wanted to know, because I feel like you and I either talked about this during the Summer Catch exit survey or like off air or something. We did do a Damon versus Affleck. Chat.
Okay,
I don't remember the sides. I could probably find that real quick.
I could have sworn. I could have sworn we did. I think we had a couple other ones out there, maybe like Tom Cruise versus Tom Hanks that were in. As an idea that we didn't really fully materialize.
I think the Hanks one was Denzel Washington.
Okay, even then, yeah, that makes sense. That was kind of like a similar time, similar, serious and action roles. I can see that.
Yeah, and actually, it looks like here that I'm not seeing who had Affleck. It's not showing it. No, I had Ben Affleck, and you had Matt Damon.
Oh yeah. See,
Yep.
okay, so that's tough there. I do remember that now. That's coming back to me.
Yep.
I also liked the roast episode 100 Bonanza extravaganza that we did. And I prefaced Home Alone by saying Jason Rossi's name, but he also really came through strong on that roast episode because this is clearly stuck with me the whole time. I'm just talking off of memory here, but he roasted us for having a celebratory victory lap on coming to 100 episodes on a podcast that anyone could do, and to middling success. So I thought that was pretty prescient and kind of hit close to home. Not that I'm thinking about it or anything.
I miss Rossi.
I do too.
But
he's still with us though. We're not.
Yes, yeah. I miss him being part of the DSG.
Yeah,
make it clear.
Also, the Build a Cinema episodes. That was another one that kind of came up that I really enjoyed there too. So I think Rossi, Billy D, Mac and Goo, they've all been a part of that stuff.
Yeah. We had everybody. Like that was the other one. That's the one I was trying to think of. That's the one that we had a lot of over the course of the show. That and original versus sequel. But in the end, like original versus sequel, just we really enjoyed it. And I mean, we didn't talk to listeners, but it seemed like from a listener standpoint, that was an idea that people enjoyed hearing too.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. I enjoyed doing them. So hopefully that comes across there.
I'm glad that we had the format that we did as we went along too. Like that was when I think as a show, we kind of took another step. Like when we not only debated it, but there's like, okay, we're setting times and all that kind of stuff and making sure we're organized. Cause those things would still run long at times, but like we moved at a brisk pace always. I like that.
Yeah, and it's good. It kind of puts you on the spot a little bit too. You gotta keep the buzzer in the back of your mind.
Yep, exactly. A level of preparation, but a level of thinking on the fly.
Yes. Okay, so our top 5 Marvel DC movies that we've done an episode on.
Yeah, why don't you lead us off on this one since I went first?
Okay. All right here. So I got number 16. This isn't this is a technical review. This is an asterisk, I guess, for number 5 for me. Original versus sequel, The Dark Knight versus the Batman, episode 161 here. So
nice.
I just actually rewatched The Dark Knight over the weekend and Dark Knight Rises. Just fantastic movies. I know they have their flaws, particularly more so The Dark Knight Rises, but God damn, they're just so good. They're so good there. But being able to compare The Dark Knight with the latest installment of Matt Reeves' The Batman. I think those two are the pillars, maybe the foundational support of the Batman franchise through the years. You can add a couple in there. Maybe that's Batman 89. Maybe that's Batman Begins, whatever. But those two, I think, are at the top of most people's lists.
Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty good going back and forth there. Number 4 for me, I'll go with Deadpool and Wolverine. Now that not necessarily my highest of scores. Maybe it's a little bit of a recency bias, but they landed so much. So it's a big fan spectacle, a lot of fan service, a lot of fun had. And I think what also kind of went into consideration with these choices is what I remember about reviewing the actual episode. So did I enjoy reviewing the episode or talking about it with you? And how does that compare to maybe how I also felt about the movie? If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And that's the thing. Like I did it differently. We'll get to mine in a second, but this is where it's like, this is why we worked. Like we knew when to do things the way we wanted to as individuals. And then we also knew like when we needed to like work as a unit. And I think that was why the show like lasted, it's going to end up being 284 episodes, but
yeah, at least I think there's a couple bonus ones in there, right? So
that's true.
We probably got closer to like 290, but
that's true. Yeah, the 2 interviews that we did, I think at least the first interview that we did, we didn't count that as an episode, so that was like 89 and a half. Technically.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. So number 3, episode 110, Zack Snyder's Justice League with Casey Walsh. Again, I gave it an 85 for a score, so it's not my favorite movie per se, but one of my favorite reviews of a movie that we did. Casey Walsh brings the heat on whatever topic. Maybe you follow him on Twitter, so you'll know. Whether you like it or not, he's bringing the heat. And this was certainly an impassioned topic for him. Fighting off the Snyderverse fans there. So getting him to take somewhat of a victory lap, I guess, there. Although I enjoyed Zack Snyder's Justice League more than the Whedon cut.
Yeah, no, it definitely was better. I still think like obviously it was like kind of he went through a lot with the Zack Snyder fans. So I get like his stance and still not loving it, but I think he was still like, it's fine at the end of it all. But I think by and large, like when it comes to that conversation, Casey's been proven right. Pretty much.
Sure.
Looking at what's happened with Snyder afterwards. So
yeah. Although I hear good things, I'll never go and watch it. But the R-rated cut of
you are hearing because we talked about like obviously we'd made the move, like we discussed the show coming to an end like a little while before this, but we had talked about before that decision was made possibly doing the R-rated cuts. That's interesting.
Yeah, I might go back and watch them now, but
I might.
Yeah, I don't know. I've heard some good things. Some that it's like almost like in a different movie.
That's how,
which is again just frustrating. I don't want to rehash that the whole argument again, but yeah.
Like okay, like good for Zack Snyder as a storyteller, but why is this like? Is it a stunt? Is that what it is? And also, why can't you just figure out how to tell a movie in a normal period of time like everybody else? And if it's on Netflix, just make it a show. No one's going to care. If it's not going into theaters, just make it a show on Netflix.
I hear you. I'm right there with you. Rounding out my top 5, though, Spider-Man No Way Home, a 91 score, episode 149. Just a great theater experience. Really fun. The first time that we really got this like super fan service in like a major tentpole movie sort of thing that seemed to be kind of like a template moving forward.
Yep.
Whether that's Deadpool and Wolverine or The Flash or whatever, right? Multiverse of Madness. No, was that before or after? But either way.
Multiverse of Madness. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Yep.
Avengers Infinity War was our last one, 98 score overall. So if you want to go back and listen to those episodes, we did a full rewatch of Infinity War, episode 166. Then we did an original versus sequel with Endgame in there as well. That's episode 90.
Yeah, that is a strong list. We have one where we're the same. So for me, I did it strictly based on the scores that I gave to Marvel and DC movies over our time. Coming in at number 5 on my list is actually Justice League Dark Apocalypse War. I gave this a 95. This was episode 68.
A lot of fun to I remember that episode.
I fucking love that movie. And with Constantine being at the center of it all, just like that's one of my favorite DC, one of my favorite comic book characters, period. But yeah, so I really enjoyed that. Highly recommend that. I think people can watch it on HBO. I'm not certain, but I believe you can. Coming in at number 4, Spider-Man: No Way Home, as you mentioned, Wes. Like I gave this a 96, episode 149 to reiterate. Just an absolute blast. And I didn't do this a lot in the course of, and I don't do this a lot in general in life, but in the history of our show, I don't know how many times I went and saw a movie in the theaters again.
Mhm.
I know I did it with this one. This is the only one I can recall actually doing it with. So I had a great time. I think I saw it with the missus, and then I saw it with my dad, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah, I think I remember you saying that. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely saw it the second time with my dad. Like I remember saying to him, like, I'll absolutely go see this again with you. And he likes to see it with me like the first time if he's going to see it with me.
Mhm.
So like it was rare, like where he was like ready to go and all about it. Coming in at number 3, I have the Batman, episode 160. And then we did obviously the original versus sequel that you talked about, but I just loved how Pattinson played the role of Batman. Like I understand like that there's debates around how he handled Bruce Wayne. And I understand it. I still I see how it worked. See how they got there, but still the way he plays Batman is awesome. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse gave this a 97, episode 224. Obviously the Spider-Verse movies have been friggin' outstanding. Doesn't matter how long the wait is, like we are excited for the next one. And then Endgame, this is the only thing in the whole history of the show that I gave a 100.
Mhm.
And we did 3 episodes on this. We did
Yeah.
a review. We did a this is pre-exit survey. But then we did a character rankings, and then we did we also did that debate, the Captain America debate that we talked about.
Yes, yeah, that's right. And then even just going back on the rewatch vault as well, well on down the road, and then the original versus sequel.
Yeah, original versus
So
sequel,
we
yeah.
got 5 episodes out of the end game there. So that's pretty good.
Great. Yeah. So quickly on honorable mentions, I
Mhm.
did mention Snyder's Justice League cut, The Suicide Squad, Deadpool and Wolverine, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever was, from a scoring standpoint, that was a 93, and so was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So yeah, that was my I guess my top 10 technically, but anyways, moving on.
Yes. Okay. So our top 5 non-Marvel DC movies that we've done an episode on here. Lead us off here. Why don't you take the lead?
So I did this one not based on scores. It's just kind of how I felt about them over the time. So I'm moving the goalposts left and right. Super Mario Brothers episode 215. This was just so much fun, and obviously like a major moment for people, and I think just kind of going to be very influential for how cinema and like the theaters like kind of evolves. That takes that next step post. We're still in the superhero era, but like people want to move on from it in some capacities. As much as I don't feel that way, like we know that it's there. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, so much fun. I love both Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt in this movie. And Margot Robbie's very good in it as well. But I think of those two when I think of that movie, especially is it Clint Booth or Cliff Booth? I always freaking do this. Cliff Booth.
Cliff Booth. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that was episode 28 of Changed My Mind.
God, that movie doesn't feel like it's that old.
Yeah, but it is for us.
Yeah.
It's like, so, but it really puts it at like 5 years old. So it's not crazy old. But
no, I know. But 5 years is
yeah, in the history of the show,
flash.
It's one of those movies too. I feel like early on that we started out like primarily focused on like superhero stuff, but then this is where we started like we gotta expand it. Like we can't just do that all the time. Like we just don't. We can't.
No, and we got to go with our interests too. You get burnt out if you're just doing all superhero comic books all the time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like from a comic book reading standpoint, like so much of what I read is not superhero stuff. Number 3, Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. And I gave this an 88. This was episode 272. This there's like maybe there's an ounce of recency bias for how high it is, but
it feels like it.
But not for having it on my list, because I watched this and I love the whole like that whole world, the whole vibe of it. And I actually did not watch the originals, like the Mel Gibson ones. I've only seen the 2 newer ones. I very much want to go back and watch those and then rewatch the Anya Taylor-Joy version.
Oh.
So that's why I have it so high, because of how it made me feel about the whole universe in general. Wanted to take a deep dive into it.
You should watch them in chronological order. I don't know if the releases go in that order, but however that works, like get the Mad Max universe marathon going.
There you go. Yeah, we the missus and I are definitely going to do a marathon of that. Then TMNT Mutant Mayhem. That was episode 232. I love that movie. I had so much fun. And then I put number 1 on this list, Civil War. Not to confuse with Captain America Civil War. Score I gave this a 96. And this was episode 267. That was obvious. That was one of all the movies we've talked about. That may have been like the most like film of all the movies. But
yeah, I would say so. I think that it's definitely up there. I think Dune is certainly up there too, which will be on my list. Civil War was number 2. And again, not for the highest of scores. I gave it an 87, but that movie has stayed with me the most. I think about that movie often. I want to rewatch it, and it just got I don't know. I think it's very interesting. It's an interesting like Rorschach test because it kind of points your politics back at you.
It does, and that you mentioned Dune, and I have Dune like in one of my other categories. I don't think it's one we'll get. Oh no, maybe one we may get to today. But just like I didn't have Dune on my list. Like that could have easily been on my list.
Yeah.
And then there's another one that
you had to get Super Mario Brothers. You know, that was important.
Wait a minute. That's not the one you should take a shot at in this. But there's another one on your list that I probably could have talked about. But let's stop talking about your list and let's hear about it.
Let's do it. Okay. Top Gun Maverick. That was episode 172. We did an original versus sequel. This is when we braved the elements and came back into the theaters. Great theater moment too. Right, that was like one of the first times I felt like that was giving me a look. No,
Tenet and New Mutants for the movies.
That's right. This
was last year, I think.
This was like maybe it was 2 years ago.
No, it was 2023.
Either way, I felt like this was like movies are back. I think this was 2 years ago because last year was Dead Reckoning.
You're right. It was 2022. I apologize.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I wasn't that far off with COVID then, but nevertheless, this was a very fun experience. Episode 9. This had to be a birthday episode or my number 4. I'm sorry, I got these all numbered weird. Episode 185. I gave it a 99 score. 3 Ninjas. Just such an important part of my childhood to go back and visit it as a grown man now. It was a lot of fun and also kind of depressing at the same time, but really enjoyed the review of that. Same could also be said for the Santa Claus. That's probably like my 4A, 4B there. Episode 168, The Northman, which I feel like kind of gets forgotten about again because we're so, comic book superhero centric here that some of these outside movies that we've done kind of get lost in the fold. But that was such a fun movie experience and a little bit refreshing to see like a real badass male lead character role there who was in a gruesome fighting tooth and nail to the death type scenario.
I knew this was going to be on your list. I remember, like, when I think of the Northman, honestly, Wes, when that comes up in any way for me, I think of you.
Oh, you should. Oh, that's nice. I hope when you think of Alexander Skarsgård and that ripped body, you think of me too.
Yeah. I guess we can go there.
I'm thinking of his body, right? But Civil War. Moving on, number 2 for me, and then Dune Part 2, number 1, episode 259, 98 score, one of the highest scores I've given now. Great stuff. Just all around great stuff.
Dune should have been on my list. It's shame on me. Dune Part 2 should have, but we also did do Dune, I think, and course for sure.
We did as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
So those should have been on my list. And Top Gun Maverick, I didn't even consider it. I should have considered it. And you bringing up the 3 Ninjas episode for your birthday episode. The fact that I didn't bring this up for favorite episodes, one of my birthday episodes, we did the the Tommy Oliver conversation, Green versus White Ranger.
Yes. I knew we had a Power Rangers, but I saw that we had the Power Rangers like Once and Always Netflix review, which wasn't good. But I knew we had another good one there. I mean, of course, that's with all the sounders that we have. So
exactly.
That should have just jumped out at me even more.
Yeah.
Okay, so top 5 shows we've reviewed. Top 5 TV shows here. We're gonna have a lot of crossover here. A couple honorable mentions first. Dave season 1 for me, episode 131, score of 93. Really love that show. But season 1, season 2 were really good, and I remember our conversations always go long on the TV episodes because we're trying to get through so much here. So I think that one I just felt so strongly about. I think I probably strong-armed you into watching it so that we could review it. I think that was that case there. So, but the other honorable mention is The Watcher. which again I might have strong armed you into as well here. Episode 194. Do you remember this
You
show
didn't
with Bobby Cannavale?
You didn't strong arm me into this one. The missus was interested in this, very
Gotcha.
much
Okay.
so, and I felt very differently afterwards than you did. But like I thought it was really good at the start, but I always felt like there was like this weird turn that it takes, and then it fucking turns into shit somewhere.
It wasn't a great series, but I enjoyed talking about it, and it had my full
Yep.
attention. And the frustrations behind the twist and the turns, or the motivations of some of the characters, I really enjoyed talking about.
Yeah, I'm trying to. So it was 194. So you gave it an 80. I gave it a 75.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the first, like, I don't remember. I'm not gonna go into like trying to figure out which episode, but at some point it just took a shift, and it was
Yeah.
like, what the fuck's going on? But for the first few episodes, for sure, it was really, really fucking good.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was Naomi Watts, and then it got me like looking at the house as well. Like apparently that's like it was based on a true story.
Yeah,
And what what that all had to do. Very interesting stuff. But my number 5, Tiger King, episode 60. Certainly a phenomenon right when we started. This is when we just left the studio and started going through StreamYard here. But real phenomenon. Loki season 1. I gave it a score of 92. That's episode 127. I was trying to find the right season of The Boys. And I just ended up taking my highest score of that. So I gave The Boys season 3, episode 195 or 179, excuse me. That's a score of 96. WandaVision, again, maybe not the best ending, but I gave it a score of 90. Week to week, right in the middle of the pandemic and everything. That was like huge.
yeah.
I feel like something to kind of keep me interested and invested week over week, and with their stylings and how they positioned each episode with like different eras, really loved. And then recency bias, maybe, but really good show. X-Men 97, 98 score.
So we do have a little bit of overlap here. From an honorable mention standpoint, Peacemaker does
Sure,
make my list.
absolutely.
We didn't give a score to The Last of Us, which is strange. But
Really?
I went to check the episode, and I don't know what happened. I don't know, but that comes in at number 5 for me. We talked about that in episode number 213. You mentioned WandaVision, like number 4 on my list has to be included in the conversation, just because not only you're absolutely right about in the pandemic, like how it was such an important moment, but it had such an impact on what Disney did with Marvel from a show standpoint. Whether or not you liked it, like it just like they had some stuff, but they continued like it just the way it evolved from there. It took some additional steps.
When I think you saw the effects of the pandemic on Disney Plus and how they filmed everything, because I feel like that might have been in the can pre-pandemic.
Yeah,
And that kind of like was one of the first shows that they opened up Disney Plus with, and then everything else they were kind of struggling with, because like Falcon and the Winter Soldier I think was the second one, and they had to alter things because it was like releasing a virus onto the world. It was one of, like the villain's plot points.
Yeah, it was a little touchy. For me at number 3, I have Invincible. We actually didn't end up reviewing the second season of it, but the first season I gave this a 93. That was episode 116. I love the comic and I love the show. I thought the second season was also great. I haven't thought about what I would give it for a grade, but it wouldn't be too far off from where season 1 landed. I just have The Boys, like we've talked about it since season 2. We didn't review season 1, but I just have that show on there, period, coming in at number 2 on my list. Maybe it deserves to be number 1 because they've done it for so long. But again, like, X-Men 97, you have it number 1 on your list. I won't chalk this up to recency bias. I think it's that freaking good. The only reason why I could say it shouldn't be number 1 is just because The Boys have been doing it as long as they have. I know you just did one season at a time, but from a whole standpoint, like, that they have that. But X-Men 97, we did like a whole month for a lead up for it, and then afterwards we did stuff as well. So that was a huge moment in the show's history. And of course, having Eric and Julia Leewald on again to talk about the show was awesome.
All right. Also, we got, just to spend a little bit of a news portion. We got a little bit of news on former head writer. I don't know if that's a former producer. I don't know what the exact title was on Bo DeMeo. Pretty crazy. Have you followed this story at all?
I've like ancillary, like seen it kind of in the peripherals. Like it seems like From what it seems like to me is basically like from a higher level standpoint, like he tried to say something after the fact, like way after now. We're way
Mhm.
after it. He says something that like to go against them, and then maybe get out ahead of Disney Plus. I don't know. Then they have their news, and it's not. It's looked a lot worse.
Yeah, so essentially, I mean, I was very interested in this story because like
Mhm.
when this was talking, we were talking about it off air about some of the rumors and everything that was circulating, and it wasn't too far off. He did have an OnlyFans. That was what I thought he was fired for originally, but apparently it's like a safer work OnlyFans. Is that if maybe that's like oxymoronic? So it's like that wasn't a big deal, but what he was doing, just to start from the beginning, he was fired from The Witcher apparently for like harassing writers and being like difficult to work with and all this stuff, right? So that's one case, but he goes on to X-Men 97. He's apparently there's people who have come forward who claim that he was not only like physical or verbally abusive, but in some cases like sexually touching them or make workplace harassment type situations. That's not like maybe like a butt slap or something like that. Like not like anything super
Mm.
serious, but still
Okay.
wrongdoing. And then he would send writers um, like sexually suggestive photos of himself in X-Men fan like cosplay.
I think I saw that one. Yeah, and like if that guy was on The Witcher before, and then he did what he did with X Men '97. It's like obviously he's very talented, but this kind of like behaving like that in the workplace. I mean, no one's going to bring you around because it's just going to lead to more problems.
Well,
No one
yeah,
wants to deal with that.
so he gets taken off for season 2 of he's no longer a part of the X-Men project anymore.
Yeah,
But they come to an agreement that he can still tweet about it as long as it's positive. So that's kind of what we saw when the show was coming out, that he would give these little like behind the scenes look on what they were thinking about certain episodes and kind of framing things so viewers would have like a better understanding and a higher level of enjoyment of the show. But now he has since come out and said that he posted like some gay fan art of him in a spider or in a Cyclops uniform for Pride Month. Now he's using that to say that as the reason why he's no longer on the writing credits for season 2, when in reality, in addition to tweeting about all that extra stuff about X-Men 97, he's also been giving information about how he was wronged and trying to create like almost like a backing of support for a crowd support, maybe as an effort to get him back in or just kind of get a hold of the public perception there. And that's what drew Marvel to come out and be like, all right, we're just gonna let the cat out of the bag here.
Yeah, he it seems like they'll like obviously like what he allegedly did. Like it sounds like obviously not great, and then on top of that, it sounds like he didn't play the hand right in all of this too.
That's my biggest takeaway is that you just didn't play the hand right. If you just shut up, like you would probably still like have all that crowd support from people who are like, I love X-Men 97. This was a great show. Give him more things to do. And even if it doesn't happen, then at least you have that support. And then maybe, you get a decent referral from Marvel or whatever, someone who worked there who maybe wasn't harassed by you that would lead to another job. But now it's like you've shot yourself in the foot so many times.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't know what he did specifically for The Witcher, but if he was there in the early stages of The Witcher, like people like The
I think
Witcher.
season 2, I think, is when he left.
Okay, yeah, people like season 2 of The Witcher. So it's like, I don't know, like you have that, and then you have X-Men 97 as being like the head writer on it, or lead writer, whatever his title was.
Yeah.
That's, like you're going to get people. Some people will say like, Disney's difficult, whatever. Like nothing, what you did never came out. So it doesn't matter. We're fine. Just don't do it again, whatever it was. Like someone could do that. Now it's like, you kind of put yourself in a spot that's
you put an unnecessary spotlight on you. And he also worked on, and I don't know if this is good or bad, but he also worked on early iterations of the Blade project. But he was taken off that as well.
Well, again, I mean that was probably tied to what was going on with X-Men 97. But and also too, for any like doubt, like because we had all this kinds of like what happened when the show came out, like what happened because he did such a good job. What happened that he did,
absolutely
lead to this happening. And it's like, well, now it all adds up because like when we heard the OnlyFans thing, it was like that's the only reason you're getting rid of him. Like it seems like
Yeah, it's salacious, but not like a
Yeah,
fireable offense.
but now it's like, oh, okay, well, now there's not a lot of doubt, and he's again like from what you're saying, like it just he hasn't responded well to it.
Yeah, and I think if if you don't like our summary of it or want something a little bit more complete and full picture, New Rock Stars had a whole breakdown on YouTube. That's what I saw.
Okay.
I don't know, over the weekend, and they did a pretty good job of summarizing everything as they usually do.
Hmm.
All right, but moving forward, there enough derailment. Top 5 leading performances from a movie that we reviewed. Do you want me to go for? You go first, Nick.
Yeah, I'll lead us off here. So, Glenn Powell as Gary Johnson, obviously a level of recency bias, but this was in
Hmm.
Hitman. But he showed so much range. And as much as like loved him in Top Gun Maverick, and that's what put him on our radar, respective, like for us at least. And then we loved him in Twisters. My thing is like he came on and just like out of nowhere, like who, I didn't know you had this kind of range. I just thought you were going to be either a dick or you would be like this fun kind of leading man in a rom com, and people will enjoy that. No, like you have a lot that you can bring to the table. So I feel like Glenn Powell is going to have his whole era of being a rom com. Maybe some blockbusters on top of what he's done with Twisters. But I think he's shown a lot more than just that. So maybe in time, like
For
he
sure.
be something else. Kirsten Dunst as Lee Smith in Civil War. That's a tough role, and she really did a really good job.
She did. I really liked her performance a lot in that. Yeah.
And like not necessarily the character that on this list that you want to hang out with, but at the
Yeah.
same time, like
Yeah.
that's not what she's supposed to be. So that was a brilliant movie, and she did a brilliant job as the lead in that. Josh Brolin as Thanos. I mean that obviously goes without saying. Having him 3 on this list is only because like we only technically reviewed in Endgame. Like obviously we talked about Infinity
Mhm.
War and the other stuff and did like rewatch, but from the only movie that came out during
Right.
yeah. So that's why I'm throwing that kind of caveat, because he could be higher on this list, but at the same time, Robert Pattinson as Batman, I need to include him because I think we had no expectation for this guy doing a good job, and then he crushed it as Batman. The way he acted out his Bruce Wayne part of it was not his choice. I mean, that's like how the character's written. So
Mhm.
whatever. I think he did a good job with that too, though. Then number 1 with a bullet for me is Timothy Chalamet as Paul Atreides. Again, like how did I not have to do it on my list? But I went into the second one, like the first one, he was fine, but it's specifically for Dune 2. Like, oh, he's gonna be the guy. The way he evolves, I thought about it mid movie. I was like, oh wow, like I didn't respect your game enough, Timothy Chalamet. Well done.
No,
sir.
absolutely. To transition from like a pampered prince to a war, war leader, wartime leader, essentially was great, and it almost did like flipping a switch is a great term for it because it did happen like at one particular moment. It felt like and
Yeah,
then it was like
absolutely.
suddenly I'm thinking he's Lisan Al Gaib.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, all right, let's go. So no, I'm with you there. He's my number 1 as well. My number 5, I'm going to stick with Dune. Maybe as a female lead here. Maybe this is a side performance here, side character. But you let me know. Rebecca Ferguson as his mother,
Ooh, no, I
Lady
think
Atreides.
you at the end of all this, you changed my mind on
Hey,
what the leads are, and a lead is not like you have like your your 1 and your 2, but it's still like the leading characters are not go beyond your 1 and your 2.
okay, all right. So I'll go with her. I thought she was fantastic in
She
both
was
Dune movies, but
good
particularly
call.
Dune 2.
Yeah.
Chadwick Boseman as my or number 4, my Robert Pattinson as Batman. I was a little bit more critical than you are, but I still agree that he's a great Batman. A little too emo of a Bruce Wayne, but again, that might be splitting hairs between writing and a performance, So
Hmm.
maybe I'm attributing that to the wrong person, but I thought he's done a great job, kind of conveying both, and maybe in the future he can be a better Bruce Wayne, but he's a really, really good Batman.
I trust that he could be the classic Bruce Wayne
Mhm.
if it's written that way. I don't think it's on him,
Yeah,
honestly.
yeah, I'm with you on that. Number 3, we'll go with Chadwick Boseman as Black Panther. At any point in time, whether we want to go to with Civil War or we want to go with Black Panther or Infinity. Is the Infinity War? No, he's probably in Endgame. Very good stuff, nonetheless. Great, great representation of the character. Gone too soon. R.I.P.
Yeah.
Alex Skarsgård as Amaleth in The Northman. Just again,
Mm-hmm.
cut up, shredded to pieces. In that performance there. So just from a physical standpoint, really looked the part. But I liked it. He kind of played like the noble savage pretty well.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Then Chalamet is my number one. We already talked about that.
Yeah.
Now this is fun because again we have a little bit of some crossover here as well, but for the most part, very good options. Top 5 leading performances from a show that we reviewed.
Before you lead us off on that, I do want to say with Bozeman, I saw like the clip of him and Shuri and I believe it's Okoye walking out of the strange circle, like
Yeah.
in Endgame. Like I saw it going back. It's just when that happened. It's like for me when I go rewatch Endgame, that's where it starts for me. Or maybe like with the Thanos fight versus the MCU's Trinity. But like I love from that moment forward. It's just oh god. Anyways, as you're saying, the top 5 leading performances from a show that we've reviewed. What do you got for me?
Okay, so I'm gonna go 1 to 5 here. So my number 1, Anthony Starr's Homelander, probably the best character on television. Great performances. Again, the facial acting is what I find very great. Very like what I'm struck by as well. He conveys a lot of emotion in his face without even saying anything. And in fact, I think Billy put it in our chat, but all the time that he's like acting sassy throughout the seasons is just very good with just like face, like looks of disgust or like maniacally laughing. It's just very, very good stuff. Tom Hiddleston is Loki, number 2. Great stuff there. I think we have the same top 3. John Bernthal is the Punisher, also really good. Talk about the perfect, like we talk about Chris Evans being the perfect Captain America, or Tony Stark being perfect for Iron Man, or well, I'm sorry, Robert Downey Jr. being perfect as Tony Stark. Which
Perfect,
yep. But like those, like Ryan Reynolds is Deadpool. Like John Bernthal quickly entered those ranks as being like a perfect casting.
Yep. It's easy to overlook him because obviously he was in the 1 season of Daredevil and then he has 2 seasons of The Punisher. But and also for us, like we did the 2nd season of The Punisher. That is how old this show is. I think we did like a review of the characters instead of like a straight up review. But like he's an easy one to overlook when we talk about it because obviously the highs of like what we have with the X-Men characters, what we have in the MCU, and then with like Batman actors. But John Bernthal is in that conversation for like being one of the absolute best castings of all time.
Yeah, and just to round out my 4 and 5, Elizabeth Olsen as Wanda Maximoff in WandaVision, fantastic. Also, like plays a very yummy mummy. I mean, when she's doing the whole mom role and like the Modern Family type thing, just perfect. And then lastly, what was it? Oh, I just had. Oh, I'll go with Michael Fassbender as Magneto. We've done some original versus sequel reviews of Days of Future Past, and that's such. So I'm going to go with Fassbender to round that out
for performances in a show.
Ah, shit. No, I only. All right, peek behind the curtain. I only had 4.
Okay,
I was trying to come up with one on the top.
I'm sorry, I can't. I would have let it slide, but
no, you got to call me out. This is what the show's all about. This is what we base it on.
Yeah, but all right. So you think on it a little bit more. I'll go through my 5 here. So Pedro Pascal as Joel. Obviously, we talk like when I think of Pedro Pascal, I do first think of him because the introduction for me was him as Oberyn Martell. So I do think of him first there, but our show's not that old. I think we did the last season of Thrones, but I really just I couldn't go there with like any.
That's another show. I should have had someone in from there.
I just was like, I mean, like, oh, am I gonna put Daenerys in there? Like, that's not even my favorite. Like, that's her worst season for sure.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of people's worst season, like from an acting standpoint,
for sure. Yeah.
Or at least writing. So I have him as Joel in Last of Us because of how good that show was. And that's such a like an obvious role when you're talking about like zombie apocalypse type stuff. And then just we've seen a lot of like, bitter, angry, whatever old man who has to like, trek across and like carry a kid around with him and all this stuff. But the dynamic that those two have was outstanding. And I believe Ellie is the girl because I didn't play the video game. But
Yep.
you got like she did a great job as well. She's also is an infuriating character. Number 4 on my list, Oscar Isaac as Moon Knight. I know in the history of our show, it's lower on our MCU ranking, but kind of middling, I would say.
Probably due to me more than you.
But I also don't blame you for that. I don't blame anybody for being like, Moon Knight's like a C show. Like if they, that's fine. Like it's a fair grading. I gave it like an 88, 89, somewhere in the high B range because of how good Oscar Isaac was in this and their choices with that character and how they wanted to write him. Specifically with Moon Knight, he has it's DID, I believe, but like multiple personalities. Like he comes in the way I forget. Oh my God, I'm blanking on it's Mark Spector's the one we meet later on, and obviously we have the cab driver super late Lockley, but I'm blanking on the guy who.
Oh no, I can't help you out here.
I'm blanking on the other.
Keep going. I'll pull it up.
In the comics, he has these 3 personalities, and then obviously he has Moon Knight, which is kind of more Mark Spector, but sometimes Mr. Knight as well. But the way they wrote it, they made some changes from the comics, made it tougher for him in some ways, but I still think he absolutely knocked it out of the park. I think when you look at that show, Oscar Isaac's performance is absolutely the greatest strength, and it's Stephen Grant.
Yes, I just got there too.
He's this nervous Nelly in the show. In the comics, like he's a movie producer, like he's where Mark like Moon Knight gets all his money. So they made a massive change, but it worked so well, and it's because of Oscar Isaac. And then we do have the same top 3: Bernthal as the Punisher, Hiddleston as Loki, and Anthony Starr as Homelander. And I know I said all I said about Bernthal. I still have him in that conversation, and even though I put him at number 3 for like greatest superhero castings of all time. But the reason I have Hiddleston as Loki ahead of him, Hiddleston is in that conversation as well. I feel like he's easily overlooked. But
sure, absolutely.
Hiddleston has to. There's a case for him to be number 1 here. Anthony Starr's just a tour de force, but like Hiddleston has to. He's playing Loki, and it's a character he's played, but that's a character who went through a lot of development, and then he's basically having to take a million steps back with Loki and then be like not too far away from what Loki became, but also you can't be the evolved Loki that he was when Thanos took him out.
Yeah, so it's exactly, right? So it's like a different iteration of Loki, but still the same Loki from the universe, but at a different point in time. Yeah, it gets very confusing. It's such like a nuanced take on it, and he does a really good job with it.
I don't. I gave Loki like lower. I think I had a higher grade for season 2 than you did, but I'm not as high on the show in general as you are. But that's mostly because of like the elements of the show, not because of what Tom Hiddleston does as Loki. I think this is like an all-time performance from him because of how challenging it is, like to do what he had to do, because it's like you have to do a good job and you have to like make this character it's like a third version of the character in a way, but you also have to be true to it in the 2 ways that he's been on screen, over a bunch of different movies, and then keep the audience happy, but like then take them along with you. It's just like a lose-lose situation, and it just shows like Hiddleston as Loki, perfect. But Anthony Starr does get number 1 because
tour de force, like you said. I mean, that's like the perfect way to describe it.
From an indie comic standpoint, I don't think we've seen a better casting.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. Amazing character. Again, just kind of like draws your attention to him whenever he's on screen there. All right, so we're going to cut it off there. And then next week we'll go through the rest of our top 5. So I think we got 7 in there. That feels right. We're right at the halfway point. But before we wrap up this episode here, grab your tickets, because there's only a few tickets left to hop on the Discharge Depot train. It's leaving right now. Oh shit! What's happening?
Is there no music?
Oh no! I hit that. Oh,
you hit the
wrong thing. Where is it?
Oh my goodness! This is why.
It's all the way down here. There we go.
Choo bitches.
Yeah. So you watched The Instigators on Apple TV?
I did. This is the new Matt Damon, Casey Affleck movie.
This.
It's really good. I really enjoyed it. Casey Affleck is definitely he's like the degenerate's not the right word. Yeah, but it's kind of what he is. Character in this. And then Matt Damon's like kind of at his like end where he's strapped for money, but they're basically just trying to pull off like a crime heist thing. But it's a heist comedy movie. So I mean, Damon's obviously been in those with Ocean's 11, and he does a great job. And he
So
is
Casey.
playing. Yeah, that's true. That's right. That's right. So Damon is playing more of the straight man here as well. Again, which obviously he thrives in that role. I feel like his character has a lot more depth to it, though. Like, I know in like the Ocean's movies, like he has like his parents, like in him being like a legacy kind of like thief, I guess.
Yeah.
But like this very different character than that, and he plays it really well. Whereas Casey Affleck is still being like his mouthy self and chirping people left and right. And he's so fucking funny in this movie. It's so good.
You give me those actors in that location with that theme of a crime heist. That's it. I'm in. Those are the three things I need. Those are like three of my favorite things. So
we would
absolutely wait to watch this.
We would absolutely review this if we weren't doing what we're doing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was looking forward to it. I'm a little upset I don't have Apple TV. So hopefully if it comes to like Prime, excuse me, Prime or something, that I can rent it. So very excited for that. I haven't watched anything. I mentioned I watched The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises. Really enjoyed, just great movies. I love those so much. But like non-show stuff, my daughter started walking like within the last week or so. So that's been a lot of fun. She's been like opening up doors and everything. So she's fully on 2 feet and in a 3-dimensional world now, which is very cool to see. It's been very frustrating over the last couple of months because she's been so close and we just want her to do it. So it's been pretty rewarding to see that kind of unfold before your eyes. Very, very cool stuff.
That's so awesome, dude. Congrats. I'm so happy for you guys.
Yeah. So she's getting there. She's moving around. She's still a little stubby legs, but it's very cool. It's very cool to see.
What's she, like 15 months now?
Yeah, 16 months.
There we go. Yeah, look at that. Wow. Yeah, time flies. It's, we've talked about it, but it's wild. Like we still have part 2 to do where we can reflect a lot more, but it's wild to think like all the things that have happened over the life of this show.
I know, right? Moving homes, right? Moving states, moving jobs.
Yep.
Finding love, creating life.
Yep. Starting families, all of that stuff. It's big career changes as well.
Yeah. So hey, we got a bunch of good stuff going on here, so it's not all bad stuff. But next week we will continue our top 5 all-time CMM related countdowns. It doesn't really sound right, but we'll have a few extra surprises in store as well. That'll be at the same bat time, same bat place. Be there or be square.